This is Sarah, Poff, and those art hands. I thought I'd try a different way with my shooting of my video. Plus, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my painting. This is my painting of my Civil War heritage. And as you see, I'm in the process of doing it. And so it has the story of many of my Civil War ancestors in it. Up here you see John Schaefer and his wife, and they're being chased by Quantrill and Jesse James, and they're leaving Missouri and going back to Indiana. Right here, this is representing George Alexander Heist. They called him Alec, and he's actually the one that my husband Alec is named after. And he had a belt buckle and a pouch that have remained in the family all these years, and we have that in our possession. This is up in that same area, up at Alanthus, Missouri, and Quantrill and his gang came in and took over that little town of Alanthus, and they put up the Confederate flag. Well, the little boy who came back and forth every day, he didn't like the fact that the Confederate flag was there. So he noticed that every day the guards took a nap. So one of the days when the guards were taking a nap, he shimmied up the flagpole and took the Confederate flag down and gave it to a lady in the community, and she hid it. Well, then they became concerned that someone might find that flag, and then people would be in trouble. So what the lady did is the lady cut it up and made diapers for the children in the community. And Alec's great-grandmother, Martha Ann Coffey, and later she married Poff, so Martha Ann Poff, she would have been about that age that she could have worn some of those Confederate diapers. So just thought that was an interesting story that we found up there. We also found that George Alexander, Alec, he signed up for the war, but yet he would come back each spring, it appeared, about the time of planting. So we're assuming that he would come back and help get the crops in so that his family would have money. This story right here has to do with my family. This would be Martha Thompson, and this would be her uncle, and this would be Jarrett Thompson, her future husband. So a Thompson married a Thompson in 1865. And the two boys here, they were on the home guard, and he was from, Jarrett was from eastern Tennessee, his family was, and these Thompsons had moved on over to western Tennessee. But Jarrett was here in the area of Dyer County on the home guard, and my cousin David and I just kind of have put that story together, mostly David's put that story together about envisioning a Civil War romance that after the war Jarrett married Martha. So then we come on down and we cross the river, go on down a little bit further south, and this would be well, we call him Isom. Actually, as I've done my research for my DAR papers, I believe his name was probably Isham. So this is Isham, and this is his daughter, Martha. And actually, these are some of the people that my mom was named after. Her first name was Martha. So Martha was a small child, and what she remembered from the Civil War is she remembered hearing the footsteps and the drum of the soldiers as they passed by. Her father was from an affluent family in the community. He was actually the overseer for the Kellys at their plantation in one of the census there. I think it was the 1850 census. So his brother did own a small place that was considered a plantation, at least in some of the writings. Their crop would have been cotton, and they would have been from Mississippi. So Isom served in the Civil War from Mississippi and was an overseer of some of the property down there. His brother was John Floyd Haynes, and there's a lot of stories about the family and how they came to Mississippi in the early 1800s. One part of the family, Martha married John Akins. Well, John Akins, his family had come to the area, and they had stayed a little while, but they had decided to go on to Texas because they weren't sure that they wanted to be around there for possibly for the Civil War. You know, some of that we just don't know for sure. And so his family, he and his wife married, you know, they were like in their late teens, they married, and she was expecting their first child. And his family up and decided to move to Texas. So he said he would write for her and send for her to come. And whether he did or whether he didn't, we really don't know. All we know is that he did leave for Texas, and he never came back again. So she was left to fend for herself during the Civil War time frame. We have made contact with some of the family now. Here in the last few years, David and some of the other family members have made contact with the people in Texas. And they go by the name Eakins, and we go by the name Akins. So this is their travel down to Texas. Okay, then if we move over on across, the chain here is across the Mississippi River at Columbus Belmont Park is what it is now. But I grew up on the other side, on the Missouri side of that same spot in East Prairie, Missouri, Mississippi County. So that was part of the heritage of my childhood. And if we move into here, this is where my grandfather, he would be my great-great-grandfather, and his name was James Tucker. James Tucker really didn't think he wanted to be involved in the war, but the Confederates kept coming, and the bushwhackers, the bushwhacking people that were Confederate, they kept coming and disturbing the people down here in Roaring River area. This would be Berry County, Missouri, and Roaring River in specific where my people lived. He hid out several different times. The children would bring him food. This would be my great-grandfather, Francis, and he would take food to his father. There's supposedly, oral history says there's a cannon hiding down there in one of those caves in and around Roaring River. We visited there this summer, and the person who owns the house now, his name's Gary Ball. He owns the land and where the house stood here in southwest Missouri. He said that there's a history recorded of how, as they were getting ready for Pea Ridge, Arkansas, the soldiers were walking across the hill, because out from the back of the lot you can see the Ozark Hills there that are very high. It reminds you of the mountainous areas when you're down there in the flat valley and you're looking up to the mountains. And he said the Confederates and the Union soldiers, most of them went around, but a few of them crossed their land and went on over into Arkansas, because on the other side of this range of hills is Arkansas. So here you see the ancestor James and some of the other people in that area. That would be James Tucker. And of course the people, this Confederate and Union guys going across to Pea Ridge. Now in this area we are moving on to the ancestors that lived in North Carolina. It was very interesting, some of the stories that were told there. My granny told me that her grandfather Emanuel Linville really didn't want to fight in the war. He hid out in the woods, and he would his children would bring him food, and so he also hid out in the woodbox one time when they came to try to recruit him. And so I was communicating with some of his other descendants on the internet, and I found out a couple of other stories that go with that, and they were easier to depict in the painting. One is that he would wear his wife's clothes to do the farming in. So he would dress like a woman so that he could farm the land and his wife didn't have to work as hard that way. So that would be Emmanuel. And then one time he was fishing on the creek and he heard the soldiers coming. And so he started to leave and gather up his stuff really quick and get away so that they wouldn't capture him and make him fight. And they said, "Oh, no, don't worry about it, the war's over." So that's what that story is. Then we move on down here and we have the Confederate ancestor. His name was Joseph Harrison. He was a little bit older in the Civil War than some of the others, but he actually was captured, and I'm researching right now to see about what kind of prison that he might have been in. Some of our ancestors traveled west by train, and just added that detail in there. Don't know of any of them that really traveled by train in the Civil War, but of course we're always doing more research trying to find that out. James Tucker, once he did join into the Civil War, he too was a little bit older, and so he was the ambulance driver at Pea Ridge, Arkansas, and this is depicting what his vehicle might have looked like. Robert Paris Mannion is Alec's great-grandfather, not great-great, because they had children when they were much older. Actually, his wife had twins at 47, and one of those twins would be Alec's grandmother. So he was a drummer boy in the Civil War. Then we come to John Schaefer, who, remember, he escaped from Missouri and went to Indiana. Now, after his baby was born, and her name was Sarepta, he then joined up from Indiana and went down on the White River. And here I'm depicting the boat, and the Quantrill's gang there again caught up with him. He wasn't in Missouri anymore, but they caught up with him down in Arkansas, and with the men he was fighting with from the Union troops. He was on a boat going up and down the White River in Arkansas, and they shot him. He was not killed immediately. He was taken back to Memphis, and he later died. And this is his tombstone depicting that he died. As far as I know, he's the only one of the ancestors that actually died from injuries having to do with the Civil War. Here in the middle you see Alec and me, and we appreciate the heritage and the sacrifices that our ancestors gave for the Civil War and other wars previous to that to keep our country free and strong like it has been. Okay, this is Sarah, Poff, and those art hands. You have a great day now.